you are essentially a startup. And
Yeah.
and startups come with challenges, and screenwriting takes a long time before that startup becomes profitable.
Another truth.
Just like any startup,
Yeah.
right? Treating your writing career like a business.
Mm-hmm. Something we've talked a lot about.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember anymore how much we've talked about it on
Yeah,
this podcast.
I mean, let's have a little.
And we have in different ways for sure. I mean, we even touched upon it, I think, with Daniel Conca when he was on the show.
Yes, that's right. He said before we set up offices in our home, used to write in a spare room above a funeral home. Brilliant.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh,
People,
man,
you find anywhere that you can go, right? I mean, so many people do the coffee shop thing. I have tried.
Well, I will say, so this morning we are currently working on another spec at the moment.
Right.
I went to Starbucks this morning, and I don't normally do that, but I wanted a break from my space.
Yes.
I actually needed a break from my space.
Well, here's the thing. Having a space that's in your house, that's near your kids, and where you can be interrupted at any time is tough.
It's tough.
I mean, look, I'm really lucky. I have a nice, big, long house, and my office right here is very separated from the rest of my house.
Yeah.
But even with that, my kid's off school. She could knock on this door at any minute.
Absolutely right.
And it's because I'm here, you know? But, you know, we made that choice after we sold Winter's Night. We made a choice. We were like, we need to be professional. We need to have an office space. And I think the instinct behind that came out of, and it still comes out of, this desire to say, this is not a hobby.
Yes.
This is a profession.
Totally.
And that we wanted to feel, and there were other reasons involved as well. You lived in Hollywood and I lived in the Valley, But the point is, there's a sense as you're working up towards becoming a professional writer where you can get lost in the, well, I only do this in my spare time. And thus it becomes really a hobby at that point, you know? And I remember very much with you and I, we actually sat down. There was a moment in early in our relationship. It was at the Sherman Oaks Galleria, and we sat down at a table outside that Starbucks, and we said, if we're going to do this,
I remember that,
we need to make this a job.
Yeah.
And we both knew, like, I was working 2 jobs, you were working 2 jobs to support ourselves financially. LA is not an easy place to do that.
No.
But we said, look, there's no point in doing this random one day a week or, you know, getting on like for, you know, an hour here or whatever.
It shouldn't be haphazard.
Yeah. We said this needs to be, and even if that only means a schedule of 5 hours a week.
Absolutely.
It needs to be a schedule.
And here's the thing. So I've talked a little bit in the past about 2 great books. One I read this year, one I read the year before. One was Indistractable by, I forget who it's by. His first name is Nir, N-I-R. Anyway, I'll find that name for you in a while. And where he talks about the importance. Basically, it's a book all about the importance of schedule.
Right.
And going, this is time where I'm doing this and I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
This is time when I am doing that. And you need to communicate that to the important people in your life.
Yes.
Your loved ones, your kids, anybody else in your
We have a shared calendar that our wives also have.
Absolutely right, that they can see, you know, and they know, oh, that's the time when you're doing that. And again, whether that's you're doing it full time or you're doing it around other commitments that you may have.
Absolutely.
And then the other one that I read this year that I talked a little bit about was the James Clear one. What's it called? Well, I can't remember the name of it. You read it as well. You listened to it as well.
Oh, Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Which is about how you make things habit.
Right.
How you can make writing a habit. And one of the things he talks about in his book is making something a habit by having it scheduled on your calendar.
Right.
And, you know, from this time to this time on these days, this is what I do, and I don't do anything else.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Dean wrote, you need to convince yourself it's a legit job as much as you do the rest of the world. And I really like that. You know, because I'm a big believer in the power of belief, and that if you are creating that, then other people eventually will share your belief that you are a screenwriter. You know,
and I think that there's also, you know, there's a bunch of other aspects to treating yourself and your career as a oh my goodness, you and your pies, treating your career like a business and not like just something haphazard. I feel like, you know, being a screenwriter, you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You are essentially a startup. And startups come with challenges, and screenwriting takes a long time before that startup becomes profitable.
Another truth.
Just like any startup, right? And I feel like there are things you need to do to invest in your company. I feel like there's things that you need to do in order to market your company, in order to continue to make your product better, all of those things. And I feel like there's a mindset that you can kind of, a paradigm shift, I'll call it, of going, yes, I'm a writer, and that it means I'm an artist, but I am also an entrepreneur, and my writing is my product, and my business is my writing career.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, completely agree. And it does just come down to mindset. Like when you're making that commitment, then that's that's what you're gunning for. But again, it is just kind of going, like I think they are two separate parts of the brain.
Yeah, they are.
They just are.
They are.
You know, it's not, and while you can have creative ideas, there are very practical aspects to that. You know, you might go, I want to go and write this wonderful screenplay. Your one half of your brain, I think it's the left, firing all those wonderful creative synapses, but the right hand side has to go, so when are we doing this?
Right. How are we making time to do this thing? And you know what I think is also interesting about that, and I think that a lot of people, myself included, won't always feel the creative energy flow at the time in which it's scheduled to happen. And there is a bit of a struggle to go, well, I've scheduled my writing time at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But I'm not feeling very creative at the moment. How do I adjust my behavior and try and either activate that creative flow, which I do think there's something to be said by, like, just doing and then all of a sudden it kind of manifests. But then I do think there's other things that you can do, and we've talked about this before between ourselves, that can, sometimes we call it filling the well. Sometimes we go, well, if we're not creatively thinking in this way, what is the other thing that we can be working on? So, even if it's just going for a walk, if you sit down and you're like, this is my writing time, but I just don't feel like typing. I'm not just going to go back to my other responsibilities, because we all have that. You know, this is the time, and I'm going to go and I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to try and clear my mind or something like that. Let's talk
about a little bit about that. So, firstly, you should schedule a time. Again, there are people out there who are not working full time, who are not working screenwriters full time. Like we are. They have other commitments, whether they be family or other employment. They might not be able to go, well, I'm most creative from 9 until 1, so let me schedule that when I'm doing my job. You just can't do it. So, you know, I think it's on the days when you're not doing that, schedule it for when you know that you are generally most creative. Now, that might be 11 o'clock at night. It just might be. Some people do that. I don't do that. But that's me, and everyone has their own creative time. That's the first thing I'll say. Second thing, regarding, what if you don't feel like being immensely creative? Well, what's the quote? A professional is someone who can do their best work even when they don't feel like it. That's one thing. Now, again, there can be moments you go, I'm just not feeling it right now. Right. Again, I would say sit with the uncomfortability and try writing something. And it's okay to let that something really fucking suck, because you can only rewrite something that you've written. So today I had some dialogue. I was like, I wasn't really feeling it. I just wrote something. I was like, here's the shape of the scene. Here's the points of view. Let me write it in really bad expositional form. Let me just write it bad and go, it's okay to write it bad. Not fucking sending this to the head of Warner Brothers. Right. No, I'm sharing it with you. And Ben's allowed to judge me, and it doesn't matter. But honestly, I don't feel that bad work that I don't feel you're going to go, that really fucking sucks, you suck.
I would never say that to you anyway.
No, but you might think that. Anyway, so I let myself write the bad version of it, and I read back over. I was like, yeah, that's not very good. How can I make it better? And then absolutely right. It's, if you're not feeling it, why I went to go and work at Starbucks today. I was like, I'm not feeling that I want to be in my office right now. Let me just go and change my environment, just to change what's going on in my space. Yeah. The regular synapses aren't firing. There's a different environment going on. And if I still hadn't done that and felt like that was working, I'd have gone for a walk. Right. Just gone, what is this? Well,
there are definitely things like, just to share with everyone some of the things that we actually do jointly when we get to that place of like, well, this is technically writing time. We have scheduled this out of our lives as work time, but we're not feeling it, right? So usually it's in the afternoon. For whatever reason, Jake and I do our best work from 9 to 1.
Yeah, that's true.
Just morning energy, we call it. But we still work in the afternoons, and we have our schedule all the way till 5 p.m. Yeah. And so sometimes we get back in the afternoon. Lately, we've been doing this podcast, which has filled a bunch of that time, which has been great because it's forced us back into creative mode in a really nice way. Absolutely. But if we aren't feeling it at that point, there's always things that we have found that you can do to still be technically working as a screenwriter. So
Benjamin,
one of them is, it's going to sound silly, but it's watch a movie. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, seriously, the number of times that you and I will, and we did this with our spec right now. We make a movie list of all the movies that we think are good comps or that we think have value add to the things that we're working on. Mm-hmm. And if we're not feeling like writing, well, we're screenwriters. We always love watching a movie. So,
one of the things, again, we talked about in a podcast way back, what are the 3 things that screenwriters should be doing? Watching movies, reading screenplays, and writing pages. And that satisfies one of them.
Yes, it satisfies 2. Reading is another thing.
Next thing.
We will sometimes say, you know what, we have this script that we've been putting off, or a comic book that we need to adapt, or a book that we need to listen
pages to. On a rewrite of a project we're producing.
A lot of times, I mean, like the number of times that we were like, you know what, let's just go off and read the rest of that book or read the rest of that script.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, that creative energy wasn't focused on the script that we wanted to do. I think, watching a movie and reading anything really, but hopefully something that leads towards the creative things that you need to work on at that time. Something work related would be great. Yeah. So those are 2 really good things. Yeah. Another thing that we do is we will say, let's talk ideas.
Talk ideas.
Come
up with some ideas.
And that may sound counterintuitive because you may be thinking, well, but wait a minute, you're saying you're not feeling creative, but then you're just going to talk ideas. But I think the thing is that
it's kind of a different set of.
It's different.
It's
It's
different.
almost a different thing, right?
Yeah, I
It's
feel
not
like when you're-
focused creativity.
Yes,
It's
that's
like
it.
it's like
yeah.
opened up creativity. It's
If,
like
if at the end of a session we hadn't come up with any ideas, we'd be like, oh, okay.
right. That almost never happens, by the
It
way.
almost never happens. We always come up with something.
Right.
Um,
We may not come back to it ever.
Might not
but
come
we'll
back
put
to
it
it
on our
because
list.
yeah, but we'll put it in a document.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all really. I think those are all, and again, and also, if none of those things are things you feel like doing, don't do them.
Right.
You know. But again, notice when you're having resistance, and notice when it's, you know,
Yeah.
actually real. Yeah.
And I think that the checking in with yourself is important.
Yep.
And look, everybody takes days off. Just because you're treating it like an entrepreneur in a business, and because you want to make sure that you show up to work on time, doesn't mean you can't call in sick. It doesn't mean you can't say, you know what, I need a day to recharge, whatever that is. But when you're doing it, you're consciously doing it in a way of going, I'm making a choice because this is my business and this is my work that I'm going to take today off. It's not just haphazard. And I think that's the paradigm shift from going from a hobbyist to a professional.
So speaking of being a professional, Dean had another comment. He said it's all good when the checks are coming in, but in the hard times, it's hard. And also hard.